So this planning was named as rolling liquidity planning. It was called as so what was a rolling liquidity planning? Every year there was a set of money which the company had. There was some money which was always involved, which the company had, and they had to do some planning for this contingency. So based on whatever was the liquid cash which was present in the company has to do some planning for this entire year, current year or the coming year. Okay, so then the next part of it was, supposedly they had already done the planning, they had implemented last year, and this year also they have some money. They need to do another planning and then also compare as where they are losing a lot of money or where they are gaining a lot of money. Okay, so this whole idea was generally called as rolling liquidity planning. So how do they do it? Let me just start by an architecture of any financial organization where they're going to do this. Here I'm going to divide the role into two parts. First one is going to be my group cash manager. And then I have my the role of these two people, the group cash manager and the subsidiary cash manager, is going to be something like this. They are going to have access to the liquid cash which is present or which is there for the people to use, and they are going to come up with a plan as how do we do this. So how they start is essentially this group cash manager triggers something. He comes up with an idea or he triggers a new planning cycle. Normally this liquidity management happens in a cycle, and mostly this is a fiscal year cycle. Okay, so now he triggers planning. Okay, so what do I mean by he triggers a planning cycle? Nothing but this guy tells all his associates, see, we have this much of cash which we have in liquid, and we need to spend this money wisely. So I want you to do some planning as how much money you will need for each of the expenses which is going to happen in the current fiscal year or in the future fiscal year. So the very first step, whenever I talk about planning cycle getting triggered, it is nothing but the subsidiary cash managers start getting an email notification. Okay, the email notification asks them to develop liquidity plans. Okay, now they've got an option. I mean, they got a mail. They are supposed to do some work here. So what do? They start by developing a plan. So how do they do a plan? They start with some plan data. Plan data may consist of hierarchical data. It can be based upon parent-child data. It can be based on plan units. It can be based on company code, etc., etc., etc. Then this plan data is dependent on some reference data again, because all plannings we don't do it basically out of the blue. Instead, we take some reference data, which is nothing but your previous year data. Okay, this reference data can be your previous cycle plan, your last year actual, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so once based on these data, once this person develops the plan, he has now seen the data, he is going to now complete the plan. This plan is now going to get completed. So there is a plan now. What happens next step? Next step is he submits the plan to his group cash manager. who then natural progression just verifies the data or reviews the data. Okay. Now, once the plan is submitted, once it is reviewed, I mean, what do they review for? They review for some whether there is any discrepancies, whether there is any suspicious plans. Most importantly, they have to look for suspicious plans. What do I mean by a suspicious plan? Whenever we talk of review, we need to talk of suspicious plans. Okay. So let me talk about what is a suspicious plan. Assuming last year the plan data says that some money, let me say, last year for one particular activity they have spending 100 million. This was last year's estimation for some particular activity. Okay, I'm talking about fiscal year. This year, for the same activity, the budget has gone up to 400 million. And this is the budget they are submitting for this year. This is a suspicious plan. This is what the group cash manager is supposed to review. He needs to understand why on a place where only 100 million was spent last year, and this year you need to spend 400 million. The reasons can be multiple. The first thing, it can be there was a mismatch somewhere, they are trying to adjust here, or there was a clear-cut case of graft. You know what is graft, isn't it? Some money mismanagement has happened there. Or there can be cases where they are losing money on one end and they are trying to take money from here and reach the other end. Okay, all of this has happened. You know, in a real-time example, you see the current scenario of Kingfisher, where they take money from United Spirits and put it into Kingfisher Airlines. So that way, these kind of plans will happen. The entire purpose of liquidity plans is to find out in case if anything goes wrong here. So the moment a person starts planning this, when we start developing a liquidity plan, you will end up identifying any suspicious plans or are we bleeding somewhere in the company. Okay, so I'll go back to my original picture now. So once the group cash manager reviews the plan, he accepts the plan, we submit it, and then we take this plan forward for the fiscal year. Okay, so this is all about liquidity planning. Okay, now we saw liquidity planning. We saw why a cash manager submits all that. We saw the forecast which they are going to give. We saw the charts and all that stuff. Okay. Now, what is our role when it comes to liquidity management? Okay. So, as Simple Finance guys, what is our role? Our role is dedicated to customizing the liquidity management. So, how do we do a customization of the liquidity management? We do it using the T code. Just one moment. Okay, so we will use the T code NWBC. I mean that we are just continuing from our last week. Okay, now what are we going to do is we are going to just go log into the system and then we are going to see how do we do a customization of a liquidity management. I'll just put you on hold. Just give me 1 minute while I log into the system. So essentially we start here. What are we going to do is nothing. We just start with the SPRO T code. Inside SPRO, we go into the implementation guide. Okay. So now inside the implementation guide, we go to financial supply chain management. So once we click on the financial supply chain management, we have a tab called cash and liquidity management. Okay. And the last of the tabs is liquidity planning. Okay. So here we see a set of activities. First we see something called specify a BPC configuration set. Then we see something called maintain planning unit settings, activate planning unit hierarchy, currency conversion rules, reference data sources, liquidity items representing balance values, and liquidity planning types. Okay, so first things first. Liquidity planning is part of BPC. What is BPC? BPC is nothing but business process consolidation. Okay, essentially any business process in order to be run in a long term needs a set of planning, and all this needs to be consolidated for the business to run in an excellent way. So liquidity management is nothing but one unit of BPC. Okay, so that is where we start by saying you have to maintain a BPC configuration unit. Second, maintain planning unit settings. So whenever we talk of a planning unit is nothing but even a company code can be a planning unit. Planning unit is like on which we are going to do some planning. Okay, then we have to take the hierarchy. Why do we come across hierarchy? Because in a real-time scenarios, it is not one company we are going to take care of. It is going to be a company which is going to have multiple subsidiary companies under the same. Okay, then any planning by default involves currency. Okay, now we are talking about hierarchy, we are talking about branches which are present across the continent. In such a case, the most important activity is to talk in a universal language. Here, the universal language, whatever I'm talking about, is one base currency. Mostly it's the case of USD. Okay, so any person who has to go for this liquidity management has to take care of this very important step, and that step is to maintain a currency conversion rule. Okay, then the next step, define reference data sources. What do I mean by define reference data sources? In case of a planning which has been already done for the previous years, based on that planning only, the current planning will go ahead. That is where we find out if there is any suspicious plans. Because last year if we have allocated 10 million for an activity, and this year we go ahead and allocate 100 million for the activity, then naturally we understand that there is something wrong with this entire references, entire planning. So a reference data source is nothing but taking previous data sources, and then based on them we are going to do a planning. Okay, so the last of it is exclude liquidity items representing balance values. This is a basic case of when we do a planning, we can exclude some of the items. And the last one is defining liquidity planning types. Okay, I think I have defined the same. Now we'll see a step-by-step activity as how we are going to do the same. Okay, the very first activity we are going to do is we are going to maintain planning unit settings. Okay, so in order to do a planning unit settings, the first thing we are going to do is click on maintain planning unit settings, and then under which you have a button called new entries. Okay, so I'll go ahead and hit the same. So I have defined my planning unit, and for that particular planning unit I'm going to give a description. Okay, this description basically what it does is it tells me what is the planning unit. In my case, this is going to be my head office or my headquarters. Okay, I'm going to tell them what is the currency I'm going to use and what is my planning unit number. Okay, the person who is a planner is nothing but your subsidiary cash manager. You remember the group cash manager, when he starts, he asks the subsidiary cash manager to go ahead and do that, and once he submits, it is going to be reviewed by the group cash manager, so he is going to be your reviewer. Okay, we have entered a company code. Now we are going to create the next planning unit. Here I am mentioning a planning unit. I am saying it's going to be my European subsidiary, and then the currency it's going to use is going to be by euro. Okay, these are the scenarios where we need to do a currency conversion. Okay, so then I'm going to select who is going to do the planning, who is my planner, and who is going to be my reviewer also. And then I give the company code. Okay, now I have defined my planning units, I have given the descriptions, I have given the aggregate currencies, I have said who is going to be the planner and who is going to be the reviewer, and also the company code. Okay. In the case of me, already since we have defined a base currency, in the case of me going to use more than one currency, then I need to define my planning currency. Here I'm going to define, either it's going to be a euro or it can be USD, which I'm going to use as my base currency or my planning currency. Okay. So it's asking, it's a task, it's a request is getting created because we started it new. I'm saving the same. Okay. Now for the first planning units, we have already defined the settings. What we are going to do next is we are going to go for the planning unit hierarchies. So in order to do that, I'm going to go to a new T code called RSA1. RSA1 is nothing but the T code where I go to my BW. Here I can have a look at my info cubes and my info objects. Okay. The thing is, whenever I say info cube, info object is nothing but a table. Okay. So here I click on the info objects. I select financial management and controlling, under which we have a tab called cash and liquidity management. Okay. Under which we have two things. One is the characteristics, one is the key figures. Now we click on the characteristics. Okay, so okay, now what I'm doing is I went to info object, I selected the planning unit, so it's called a /ERP/org unit. I check the version, it's actually active, and below that we have a tab which says hierarchy. So if there is an option with hierarchy ticked, you can go ahead and maintain the hierarchies. So now we click on the maintain hierarchy. Okay, so already I have okay, just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute, okay. Now we do see the hierarchy. We see there is a headquarters, there is an European subsidiary, and there is one more hierarchy level which we have created. So we can create one more sub level or nodes of the same level. Okay. Okay, now the whole purpose here is to tell you about the hierarchy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit back and I'm going to go back to this configuration what we were doing. Okay, so let me summarize what we did. First, we created configured the planning unit settings in SPRO. We went to financial supply chain management. Inside that, we went to cash management. Inside that, liquidity management, and then we started. Then the next step is in order to check if the hierarchy has to be maintained and activated, we went to RSA1. We went to info objects. We selected planning unit, and then we checked the status is active. Then we went to maintain hierarchies and check the hierarchies. Fine. Okay. Now I'm going to hit back. I'm going to go back to the settings part of it. Okay. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. So the next step in this process is we come back to SPRO, we go to financial supply chain management. Now, we need to maintain the items for which we are going to talk about the liquidity planning. So, what do we do is we go to cash management, then we have a tab called liquidity items, under which we have something called edit liquidity items. Okay. So, we click on edit liquidity items. Okay, we are going to create a list of entries here. Okay, I think I lost my access. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, these things are self-explanatory. So I'm just defining a liquidity item. I'm defining whether the cash flow is in or out, and then we are just giving a name for the same. Okay. Okay, so we have created a set of liquidity items. I have put cash inflow, cash outflow, cash deposit, and cash withdrawal. Okay, so okay, so what we did, so we went to liquidity items. We created a set of liquidity items. Actually, if you see here, these two steps we already converted. I mean, we just finished. We first maintained unit settings here for our unit hierarchy. Went to RSA1, check the hierarchy there. Okay. So one thing I forgot to tell you is, whenever we do a customization for a liquidity item, the very first step is we need to check if the BW content is installed, because that RSA1 is part of BW. So that is where we need to do that. So the very first thing we need to do is we need to check if RSA1 is installed. Okay. So we did this step. We went to RSA1. We did this step. Then we came to liquidity items. Created the liquidity items. Logically, the next step is we need to go for a currency conversion. Okay. So we will go ahead and do a currency conversion. Okay, so what is the currency conversion rule I am setting here? I am saying that from my liquidity item cash outflow, it goes to cash inflow. It starts from planning unit 2 to my target planning unit 1. The source planning unit is my European subsidiary. My target planning unit is my US headquarters. So in such a case, the flow happens from UR to USD. So any currency conversion, any currency which comes in euro should be converted to USD. Okay, once again I'm losing my connection. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, so I'm getting an error here saying this value is not defined in this table. So let me just check that. to see my currency here. What is happening here? Okay. Okay, it does not exist for the KM2. So what I'll do is I will add one. Okay, bear with me while I go ahead to add one more entry. Okay, so once we are doing this step, we added planning currencies for planning unit 1 but not for planning unit 2. That was the reason why it is giving me that error. Okay, so now what I'm going to do now is to go ahead. Okay, so that issue is fixed now. I will now save it. Okay, so I will add one more conversion rule. Let me check what is left out. Cash deposit. Okay, cash deposit can be outflow, inflow, 1 USD. Okay, so I have added conversion rules now, saved the same. I'm coming back. Okay, so the one error which happened was, if you notice, the one error was because I did not maintain the settings correctly for my planning unit 2, and that was the reason it was not allowing me to maintain a conversion here. Okay, then the next one is we are going to define the planning types. Okay, so when we started with the definition, we mentioned it as rolling liquidity plan and the non-rolling ones. Okay. Okay, so when we started with the definition, sorry about that. When we started with the definition, we started with a rolling liquidity plan. The whole reason why it was called a rolling liquidity plan was this plan was actually done for one particular fiscal year, which means for every month the plan will repeat itself. Okay. Simultaneously, when we have a rolling liquidity plan, there is a case of we can go ahead to have a non-rolling liquidity plan also. Okay. In such a case, both these options are not entered by us, but rather it is default. These options come as a default. Okay, so let me go back. Okay, so if we go to define liquidity planning types, by default you find these two liquidity plans. Okay, the thing is, now in my organization I want a plan which repeats itself for every 3 months, or it should be a biannual, which means for every 6 months. So what do? I can go ahead to create a new entry here. Okay, so the whole idea here is that we can click on new entries. You want a plan which repeats every quarter, so you can go ahead to create them, or you want to create everything which is biannual or semi year, so you can go ahead to create the same. Okay. Next thing is we go ahead to define the liquidity item hierarchies. Once I do that, it goes to my NWBC code. You remember we saw it last class. So it goes there. So what I'm doing is I'm just clicking in order to create a liquidity item hierarchy. Okay, I'm going to create a hierarchy name. Okay, now we have seen a liquidity item which has got created. To this particular item, we are going to add a node. Okay, when I say as a child and as a sibling, the difference is a child node is one level lesser than the parent node, and whereas a sibling is equal. Okay, so if I am going to create another hierarchy which is below SmartSoft and they both are the equal level, then it's a sibling. But right now I'm not going to do that. I'm going to create one which is below that. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to select okay. Now you see what we created, we have now brought it to a hierarchy. Okay. Now we are going to add one more thing, but right now we're going to add it as a sibling. Okay, so now you see we have a cash deposit, we have cash inflow, which we have added to the hierarchy. Now these are what I'm going to call as my liquidity item hierarchy. Now if I want to add one more node which has to be below the current nodes, I can go ahead to create the same. Okay, now I have done all that. I'm going to hit my save button. I get the beautiful message, it says hierarchy saved. So I have done my liquidity item hierarchy. Okay. So if you see here, we do see the hierarchy list. So when I just do a mouse hover over that, I do see what are the liquidity items which are used in that hierarchy. So technically with that we have configured whatever we have needed for a liquidity planning. Okay. So our part of the role will be to do this configuration, and we have done the configuration. Of course, once we did the configuration, we do come across issues I mean, we came across the issue of it's not accepting a value, but that is how we learn, isn't it? So this is all about liquidity planning. Okay. So with that, I am just going back to my paintbrush again. Okay, so actually we have completed customizing our liquidity management. Okay, so with that we have completed. What are the things we have completed is we have completed bank account management, we have completed cash management, we have completed liquidity management. So technically the things whatever we have completed for simple finance are as follows. Okay, we started three things. Okay, so I don't know if you still remember this diagram. This is where we started. This is where we said the system hangs on to. Yeah. 2 weeks back, we started with SAP accounting powered by SAP HANA. Then last week, we saw SAP cash management powered by SAP HANA. We continued it till this week, and finally the subject which we have still kept it pending is this. All of them together form simple finance. Okay, so out of which we have completed these two. Okay, what is remaining is our integrated business planning for finance. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here now. Our agenda from now till tomorrow will be integrated business planning for finance. Put up a new tab. Okay, so before we come up to integrated business planning for finance, we need to know something. First things first. An integrated business planning can be used for any module of SAP. So technically you have integrated business planning for sales, integrated business planning for material management, so on and so forth. So, but our agenda is going to be only IBPF, which is nothing but integrated business planning for finance. Okay. In this case of integrated business planning for finance, the thing we need to know is like our core scenario or our landscape, we need to understand or we need to assume that we have a system which supports both ECC 6 and also BW. Okay, because some of the cases we need to pick from BW, and so we need to assume the same. Okay, so let me just draw a diagram. I say this is going to be my HANA system. Okay, and here I'm going to have my this is going to be my ECC 6.0 and this is going to be my BW. Okay, so so in order for me to understand integrated business planning, what are the things I should know? Basically, integrated business planning comes as part of BPC 10.1. What is BPC? BPC is business process consolidation, which is nothing but it is another package which is embedded in SP06 version of HANA. From SP06, by default you get BBC 10.1 which is embedded. This contains my IBPF. Okay. So I'll just keep this somewhere here. I'm going to call it my IBPF. Okay. So basically my IBPF is part of DPC, which is again a part of embedded systems in from SP06. Okay. My BW is actually a separate system. The reason why we maintain it as a separate system is during the course of running a system, we don't want BW to load data or to disturb the normal operations. Okay. So let us start with the overview for IBPF. Okay, so we start with introduction to IBPF. In order to know this, we will do some work. Okay, basically we will assume ourselves to be the head of a company. Okay, if I am the head of a company, what will be my agenda? Okay, if I am the CFO of a company, what will be my agenda? So basically, I'm more concerned with the overall well-being of a business. Okay. So first is how does my business interact outside? Okay. The second point is operational excellence. This is nothing but how does my company perform inside? Okay. Then last, how does all my operations compile to the set of existing rules and what are the risks which are involved? Okay. So basically, I need to engage the business based on real-time analysis of financial and operational business scenarios. Point 1. Point 2, all my financial processes has to be efficient and it has to have a collaborative relationship with all the people I interact. Who are the people I will interact? I will interact with customers, I will interact with suppliers, I will interact with banks, I will interact with government authorities, so on and so forth. Then, when it comes to running a business, I need to maintain a global compliance, regulatory compliance. Like if the banks, they need to maintain a Basel II compliance, isn't it? If it is going to be, we have that ISO 9001 standards, just to say that we are doing a work in compliance with a set of rules. Okay, so we have to maintain global regulatory compliances and controls for accounting purposes, for tax purposes, for across currencies, for multiple languages used, and for industries, so on and so forth. Okay, so in this particular scenario, what are the things I will need? I will need data. First things first. What I will need? I will need data. How do I need data? I need all kind of data on the fly or in real time. Okay. So let me say this is my SAP HANA platform. Okay. First things first, I will need data, which is nothing but I will do some accounting. Okay. Then, based on this, I will do some more work, which is nothing but my business planning. We spoke of liquidity planning and all plannings, right? So, okay. So based on that, I will do some business planning. What next I will do? The third thing, when I have done with all my accounting, When I am done with my business planning, naturally I will predict what I call predictive analysis. Okay. All business runs on this predictions, isn't it? Do you agree with me or not? Any company, it starts predicting the future. It starts telling, see, today we are a 1 crore company, tomorrow we will be 10 crores, day after tomorrow we are 100 crores, and based on that they increase their output, they recruit people, they do planning, they invest in infrastructure, so on and so forth. So, whenever I talk of IBPF, which is nothing but an integrated business planning for finance, all I am talking is about predictive analysis, about doing a business planning, about existing data. Okay, so what is the key capability of IBPF? The very key capability is it is a single planning solution. Okay, currently there are a set of solutions. Based on all these set of solutions, we need a single planning solution. Okay, then what do we need? We need real-time access to both master and transactional data. Why do we need it? We need to do some modeling, we need to do some variance analysis, and based on that only we are going to do a prediction. Okay, then when we spoke of HANA, we spoke of reports, isn't it? And what kind of reports we spoke of? We spoke of drill down reports. Now, when I say a prediction for different units of a company, what I need to do is, if I say HR, I need to double click on HR, and that again it needs to open up. I need to open up into the tabs which are under HR. So essentially, what I need is a drill down report. Okay, then I need to identify what is my trend and how do I forecast things. Okay, if current trend says that this field is going to make some money, or this is my object which I am manufacturing, so I need to know what is the trend. I need to know how this is going to do well, and based on the trend, I will do a forecast. So what is trend and what is forecast? Trend is what is currently happening, and forecast is what I predict will happen in the future. Okay, so I have data, I have built reports. Based on the reports, I know what is my trend. Based on the trend, I come up with forecasts, and based on all this, I have to do a simulation. So what is simulation? A simulation is nothing but a test run. Okay. So today, if I am selling a product and my demand is, the demand is around 100,000 units, and tomorrow I do see the trend that the demand keeps increasing by a factor of 10. So what I will say is, by the end of 2016, I need to manufacture 1 million units. So my trend today says that the data increases by a factor of 10. My forecast says that I need to go for a production of 1 million. So based on that, what I'm supposed to do is, I will do a simulation. What is the simulation here? I will try to say, if I need to expand my factory, I need to bring up more stuff, or I need to make them work in 2 shifts so that I hit the desired result. So based for that, I do need to do a simulation. Okay. So whenever I talk of integrated business planning for finance, what are the things we spoke of? We spoke of taking existing data, analyzing current trends, forecasting the results, and simulating the data based on the results. Okay. So what is integrated business planning for finance? Okay, let me write down this heading. What is IBPF? Okay. We have some points here, so I'll repeat them. I'll state them one by one. Okay. Essentially, it is nothing but the BPC 10.1, which is embedded in SAP HANA. Okay. When I say SAP HANA, I'm not talking about the platform. It's SAP Business Suite for HANA. So now it comes with. So BPC 10.1 comes with SAP Business Suite for HANA. So there is nothing like you need to install it separately. And second, IBPF was the first technology which was an embedded technology, which means like it was pre-packed with what was given to you already. Okay. So currently we do a set of plannings. So how do we do a planning currently? In FICO, we do plannings based on reports. Okay, we do set of batch processing, then we take the reports, then we compare monthly reports, like 3-month report we compare, and based on that we do a prediction. Okay, so actually IBPF is an alternative to current planning capabilities. Planning capabilities of FICO. Okay, then I spoke of current planning. So when I spoke of current planning, and I spoke of current planning getting compared monthly. So what really happens? What really happens is today I take the data for the month of January. Next month I take data for January and February. The third month I take data for Jan, Feb and March. So essentially what I do is I keep replicating the data. Okay. So data replication is an issue which comes up whenever, whatever is the current planning capabilities we have. Okay. But actually in the case of IBPF, there is no data replication. Not only we don't have any data replication, but it has real-time access to both master and transactional data. Okay. Then we first started with saying it was an embedded technology, essentially, which means it is already integrated with all the other data models. So this is nothing but an integrated model. So when I say it's an integrated model, what does it help me with? It gives me a flexibility to work. And second, if I need to do a simulation, it is quite an easy simulation. So basically, what is integrated business planning for finance is, it can be defined as follows. SAP BPC 10.1 version powered by SAP HANA, which is embedded in SAP Business Suite for HANA. Okay. Then it is an alternative methodology to the current planning capabilities which are given by FICO. Third, it actually allows access to both actual data and master data in real time from SAP without any data replication. Fourth, it is an integrated data model that allows for flexibility and easy simulations. Okay. So when we speak of all this, you remember we spoke of transaction table, we had only one transaction table, we had AC, doc-A, so on and so forth. Basically, now every data comes from a line item point of view. Okay, so when we have data which are coming from a line item point of view, which means essentially you are using only transactional data for reporting. So any reporting or any requirement for a reporting can be taken on an ad hoc basis, which means like you need not ask your ABAPer to develop a report and should take it, but rather today you need a report, we can just pull out the report basically because we are just pulling out only from line item tables. Okay, so once you have a facility to do reports on an ad hoc basis, combining them with the line item tables in our accountings and also our planning data, basically we can answer questions like what has happened, why did it happen, what is happening now, and what will happen next. Okay, so any company at any given point of time, if I need to question the company's growth progress, I can do that based on my IBPF. Okay, so how do I do it? Basically, because now I'm going to take data only from my line item table. Since the data comes from a line item table or transactional data, so any given time I can pull out a report based on ad hoc basis. Now, once we talk about line item data combined with planning data and transactional data, we can actually answer questions like what happened, what will happen, and what is the possibilities, so on and so forth. Okay, so basically, what does IBPF do? Basically, IBPF, so let me just put down the question here. I have already mentioned this point. Any planning which happens in ERP, there is a 99.9% case of data replication. Okay. So, very first thing is, it will eliminate data replication. Okay. Second, when I spoke of IBPF, the very first step I told you was data flow. There were two different servers. We had BW server on one end, we had ABAP server on one end, and then we had a data flow which will happen. Okay. So, whenever there is a data flow from the ECC end to the BW end, because most of the time we do a planning from the BW part of the system, we call the whole process as retract plan data. Okay. So, an existing setup of a retracting plan data can be used in our IBPF again. Okay. Then, the third point is, there is a limitations when we use ERP through SAP GUI. So, what is the limitations we talk of? The limitation we talk of is basically all data comes up in batch processing. Okay. So, there is no case where it's real-time data. All data is 1 day old. So, I mean, in a real-time scenario, I can give you examples. The example happens something like this: when a currency falls in an exchange rate scenario. Today, if the USD falls, or if the Chinese currency falls, or I'll take the most easiest scenario, the Japanese yen falls by 100 points. It affects business everywhere except SAP. The reason being, all this exchange rate data comes at the end of the day, and technically all our problem starts from the next day onwards. Okay. So basically, whenever we do a planning in ERP, we use batch processing and the data is 1 day old. So basically, our data is old data. Nothing is real-time data. So whatever business happens in real time, we are not able to touch it because of our design. But when we come to IBPF, which is integrated business planning, we'll be able to touch a real-time data. Okay. Now I keep repeating the word IBPF, IBPF. So how do we do this planning? How do we do this planning at the first? Currently, what is the tool we use when it comes to planning? In any scenario, in any organization, what is the tool do we use? So, assuming this is my organization, what is the tool do you think I will use for planning? Most of the time, 99.999% of the time, I will use Excel sheets. Isn't it? Excel sheet is the tool I will use. What I will do, I will download all the data into Excel sheet. I will make a pivot table. Based on the pivot table, I'll put a graph, and based on the graph, I'll be doing all the reporting. Am I correct or not? This is how any system works. Right now, what are we going to do when it comes to IBPF? So what does IBPF do now? Again, I told you, like, we are going to do planning. And how are we going to do the planning? Basically, IBPF is nothing but all plannings happen through your Excel sheet. I mean, for whatever funda terms I'm using, it is nothing but you have a set of data which is present in your basic server here. Okay. You already have your views also here, which are designed here. So based on the views, we pull out the data, and based on the data, it is exported to Excel sheets. And all I'm going to do is take SAP data in Excel sheet and do some processing. So okay, but I don't call it my Excel sheet. Instead, I give a fancy name to it, and I call it analysis for office. Okay, so system is like this. There is going to be my SAP HANA platform. Okay. On top of it, I'm going to have my SAP business suite. Okay. On top of it, I'm going to have, till now we spoke of Fiori, isn't it? We said Fiori is going to do magic for me, Fiori is going to do that and this. But in the case of IBPF, I'm going to use analysis for office. Okay, analysis for office is nothing but one more tool or one more front end tool, which is more like my Fiori. Okay, so I told you now. I told you that now my IBPF helps me to pull data into Excel sheets, and based on the Excel sheets, I'm going to do that. So how it's going to help me do this? What is the difference? If I'm going to use Excel sheet, why I have to call it an analysis for office? So basically, it's like this. When I say there is a set of planning which is involved, here whenever I talk of planning, whenever I use the term planning, okay, whatever may be the industry, the planning remains the same. So you will do a set of forecasts for one or two activities only. Okay. So whatever is the planning, whatever is the industry, the planning is going to remain the same. Okay. So what are the things we spoke of? We'll just take examples from whatever we spoke of. We spoke of liquidity planning. Then last class we spoke of cash positions. Then we spoke of bank account managements, so on and so forth. Okay, so this doesn't change. For anywhere is the industry, this is the whole thing we are going to use. Okay, so what SAP does here is, in my analysis for office, if all the planning is going to be one and the same, they end up giving me templates. Okay, so basically I have a lot of templates here. So whenever I say I want to do liquidity planning, I need not start from scratch. Instead, there is an existing template. I just download the template. Then I download the data for the template. All that other details are already there. All I have to do is just click next, next, next. I create the chart. Voila, I'm done. Okay. So this is the whole story. Sorry. This is the whole story behind my IBPF. Okay. So let me summarize it. I didn't want to get into too technical, so I'm just keeping it very simple. You have a database, you have an SAP business suite, which comes with an embedded BPC 10.1. So what does this BPC 10.1 do? It helps you do some planning. And what planning it does? It helps you do planning in real-time data. Okay. So based on the real-time data, you're supposed to do a set of planning. Okay. So this set of plannings remain the same across industries. Example, for cash position, for account management, for liquidity planning, so on and so forth. Okay, so I can do all that using Excel sheets. Here I don't call it my Excel sheet. Instead I call it analysis for office. Okay, so here again, based on my planning requirement, there are a set of templates which SAP gives me already. All I am supposed to do is download the template, download the data, put the data into the template, click on next, click on create the chart, so on and so forth, and I end up getting the results. Okay, so now how do I define for finance, which is nothing but this is my BPC 10.1. This is my simple finance. Okay. So essentially, these two added together gives me my BPC. My integrated business planning. Okay. So, definitions part, this is what is whole about IBPF. Okay. So, how do I differentiate it with my current plan? So, what do? I draw one line. Okay. Currently using ERP, what am I going to do? I mean, currently I do planning, isn't it? I use SAP GUI. Okay. But the problem here is the planning is more a sequential planning. When I say sequential planning, what do I mean by it? Planning is step by step. Today, if I want to start with my cost center plan, only when I finish my cost center plan, I can go to my project plan. Because if I am going to do a project plan, it says that the cost center does not exist. Basic things. Okay. So basically, each planning happens only when the previous planning is completed. Okay. So a current SAP ERP planning is done in SAP GUI, and second, it is a sequential planning process. Okay. Now, the biggest difference here, what happens is, when I say SAP GUI, you know what I'm talking of. It's our famous blue screen. Here, that is not the case. We can use HTML, or we can use analysis for Office, which is nothing but my Excel sheet, or I can use my web-based data. Second, okay, here the planning is not dependent on a sequential system. Instead, I can do parallel planning process. On one side, I can do my cost center planning, and the simultaneously on the other side, I can go ahead and do my project planning also. What are the default points I should say? So it is an HANA optimized performance, of course, because now what we do is basically we have HANA views here. What do I mean by a view? A view is nothing but 2 or 3 tables are joined together, and the end result I can just have it somewhere. Okay. So if I am talking about cost center planning, I can directly go ahead and use the HANA view. Or if I say project planning. So how does a project planning look like? I'll draw that for you. Assuming there is a project here, I call this project table. Okay. There is a project table. The project table consists of WBS elements. Okay, you know WBS elements, isn't it? Any project is broken down into multiple works. So they are called work breakdown structure. Okay. My idea is I need to pick up 3 fields from this table and 5 fields from this table. In the case of SAP GUI, what I would have done, in the case of SAP GUI, I would have written a code, I would have written an ABAP code for selecting values, these 8 fields, and then displaying or using it in a report. Isn't it? But actually here, in the case of HANA, what I will do is, I will create a view. How do I create a view is, I will take this table, I will connect it with this table, I'll just pick this 8 fields alone, and I can save this entire thing in one view. This entire thing can be saved as a view. I can call it a HANA view. So every time someone says I need project view, I can just call this view and I can give the 8 fields output, which I can go ahead and use it multiple times. Okay. Then what else advantage I can talk of here? I spoke of HANA optimized performance. Then the next thing I can talk about is actual data. You remember very first class we spoke of actual data, because actual data was present in real time memory and we can pull out the data, so I can use actual data. And last but not the least, in the case of IBPF, I can maintain an activity log also. Okay, so let me write it here. So whatever activity has happened, we can just capture all of the same in an activity log. Okay. So these are the difference between an ECC planning and IBPF. So basically, what happens is all planning happens in SAP GY. Here it happens in analysis for Office. Then we went for sequential planning. Here it is a planning parallel planning, and then you can go for an HANA optimized performance. Then we can go for real-time actual data and activity log. And most importantly, here we use ABAP-based reports, and here we use HANA views. Okay. Then I'll go to my next subject. Okay, I'm going to talk about the architecture. Okay, so I just kept saying real-time data, real-time so and so on. So let me see how this entire structure is maintained. Okay, well, let us see that. It's quite simple actually. At the base we have SAP HANA database, which also contains all the views. Okay, on top of it we have our SAP Business Suite. When I say SAP Business Suite, it contains whatever we spoke of till date. It contains SAP Accounting, SAP Cash Management, so on and so forth. Okay. Okay. Then, SAP Business Suite, including the accounting covered by HANA. Okay. Now, normally we go for the third layer, okay, but actually we are going to see something else here. For a change, we are not going to talk about our display part of it, instead what it contains now. Okay. See, basically, when we talk of SAP Business Suite powered by HANA, it comes with an embedded BPC component. Okay. So, whenever on top of it is my user experience. Okay. When I say user experience is what the user is going to use or what the user is going to take from here, which is nothing but my Excel sheet. So, multiple users will download multiple Excel sheets, and then based on the Excel sheets they will do pivot charts and they will pick up data. Okay, so basically there is flow of data this way. I can use this. So there is a data flow this way, and from this views and also from embedded BW, we get real-time data. How do I get embedded BW real-time data? Because there are info cubes which are present there in embedded. Okay. So this is my real-time planning architecture. So how do I define my planning architecture? My planning architecture consists of my SAP HANA database, on top of which we have SAP Business Suite, on top of which we have embedded BW. See, till now we never spoke of BW component whenever we spoke of simple finance, but here we need to consider a real-time case of BW being a part of what is our existing architecture. Both in the case of BW and in the case of HANA, real-time data is present. In the case of HANA database, it's going to be present in views. In the case of BW, it's going to be present in info cubes. Okay, so these data is exported to Excel sheets or nothing but our analysis for Office. Okay, so right now, how is the data planning happens in ECC? Okay. In the case of ECC, all data are present in planning silos. Okay. So what do I mean by planning silos? Okay. The idea is like this. Assuming there is an expense report. There is an expense report. The expense report picks up values from expense table. It picks up value from expense table. Then we have profitability analysis or profitability planning. Okay. So, which is here. Each of this particular report takes value from one particular table, which may or may not be related to the other. So, in my current case, expense report will take values from expense tables and profitability report will take values from profitability tables. Okay. So, essentially, each data is segregated into separate parts. And the last, what happens is when we go ahead to do a ETL, we take all the data, then we merge all the data, and finally this data goes out for a planning, okay, which is nothing but batch jobs. At the end of the day, we run all batch jobs. We run an expense report batch job, we run a profitability report batch job, so on and so forth. We collect all the data, then bring it down to some Excel sheets, then merge it, then do a planning. Okay. So what will happen here? Very seriously, only one thing will happen. It's a manual process. So 99.9% you will end up making errors. This is the most of the cases an FICO consultant or a techno-functional consultant, that is the only scenario he comes up to work every day, isn't it? Most of the time the first ticket of the day is they say this report doesn't work properly. But you go ahead, analyze the report, what do you find out? You do find out that they have done an error because they have not joined the data correctly or they have not downloaded the data correctly. Okay. Now, in the case of IBPF, what do? We drop this entire architecture. Instead, what do? We have only one table. We have only AC docket table. So, there is a centralized or a common financial planning model. Okay. There is only one particular table based on which there is only one view, and based on that view we are going to pull out the data. So there is no need for data to be present in different silos then transferred to one place. Instead, we have only one common financial accounting model or one common financial planning model. Based on that model, we already use HANA's in-memory database advantage, we leverage the advantage, and based on that we just go ahead and do a planning. With that planning, what we are going to do is we can go ahead to do a better end-to-end simulation capabilities. Okay, so this is the third point what we need to talk. Then some of the advantages of BPC, what are the things which we can talk of? Basically, when we do a planning, we can just think of planning functions, we can think of inputs, and we can think of adaptability. Adaptability is if I need to scale down a system or if we have to scale up a system. Okay. Whereas in the case of IBPF, I can extend the system. Okay, extensibility. Then I can do an in-memory planning. In-memory planning is nothing but there is a planning application kit which is given by SAP HANA, using which you can do your own planning, and then you have some BPC features like you have an audit log, an activity log, etc. So in case you go ahead for a failure, we can actually work on the same. Okay, so let me just summarize the same. Point 1 is going to be BPC features. Point 2 is going to be my PAK, or I call it my in-memory planning, memory planning, then the points which are already present in our existing systems. We can adaptability, planning functions, and last but not the least, it's going to be my data input. Okay. Okay. So these are the benefits if I'm going to use my business process integration. Okay. What I'm going to do now is, technically we need to go ahead and look into the Excel sheets in order to see how it's going to work. We will not do it today. We will stop the class here, and then tomorrow we'll continue with downloading of the analysis for Office sheets, and based on that, how do we go ahead and do this? Is it fine? Okay, so I will stop here for the day, because what I'm planning tomorrow is, I just want to give you a hands-on as how we are going to download all this analysis for Office templates, and how we are going to do whatever planning we talk of, because I do find that too much theory we will not be able to concentrate further. Okay, so with that we'll stop for the day. We'll continue tomorrow. In case of any questions, to post it out. In case of any other issues or doubts or anything, just do send us a mail. Okay.